Ukraine's economy is in shambles, and it isn't being talked about much. However, the collapse of Ukraine's economy will definitely dictate the direction that the ongoing conflict takes. Given the nature of the conflict, let us understand how Ukraine is being battered economically by the war. How long can Ukraine hold? And how will its economy look once all this is over, if at all? As the West mounted sanctions on Russia, it was estimated that the Putin regime would face a bigger economic hit this year. But no, Russia is far from being in shambles. The World Bank said that the impact of sanctions had so far been less severe than forecast. According to a database from Yale University's Chief Executive Leadership Institute, brands such as Apple, McDonald's, IKEA, Visa, and MasterCard, and more than 1,200 foreign companies have either suspended or curtailed their operations in Russia. But the Russian economy has so far demonstrated greater resilience against all the combined sanctions. Despite losing more than 30% of its value in late February and March, the Russian ruble has since rebounded to become the best performing currency in 2022. The IMF now predicts that Russia's GDP would shrink by 6% instead of the originally projected 8.5%. Russian inflation has slowed down as well. It fell from its peak rate of 17.8% in April to 14.9% in August. Meanwhile, Russia's current account surplus has swelled to a record high of $167 billion between January and July, more than triple from a year ago. The World Bank has estimated that Ukraine's economy will shrink at a rate 8 times that of Russia this year as a result of Putin's so-called special military operation. The World Bank said that the Ukrainian economy would contract by 35% in 2022 compared to a 4.5% fall in the Russian GDP. The World Bank also said that Ukrainian economic recovery would be slow and the cost of repairing the damage would be massive. It put the cost of rebuilding Ukraine at a minimum of $349 billion, an amount that is more than 1.5 times of Ukraine's pre-war GDP. Ukraine was already Europe's poorest country even before the war began. Now, after 7 months of crisis and war, 1/3 of its population has been displaced and 60% are living below the national poverty line. Anna Beard, Vice President of the World Bank for the Europe and Central Asia region, said, Ukraine continues to need enormous financial support as the war needlessly rages on, as well as for recovery and reconstruction projects that could be quickly initiated. The European Union's contribution under the European Peace Facility called EPF for Ukraine totaled to $2.48 billion by July 2022. The United States, on the other hand, has been the largest supporter. As of August 3rd, it supported Ukraine with a total of $44.08 billion, made up of $24.76 billion in military aid, $8.9 billion in humanitarian aid, and $9.9 billion in financial aid. But now the flow of new international support for Ukraine has dried up. No large EU country like Germany, France, or Italy has made significant new pledges. And they're likely not to do so now that winter is coming and the energy crisis has reduced their capacity to help Ukraine. The newest update of the Ukraine Support Tracker by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy shows that Ukraine received less than €2 billion in new pledges of support. Eurozone inflation has now hit a new record high of 10% in September 2022. The September estimate from Eurostat stated that the whole of Europe is struggling as energy prices rose 40.8%, up from 38.6% in August 2022. Core inflation climbed 4.8% on the year, up from 4.3% in August, and economists broadly expect the situation to get worse before it gets any better. The EU countries desperately try to control the soaring inflation through a cap on gas prices, funded by joint borrowing. Their ability to share capital with Ukraine is dwindling. So, how does Ukraine plan to build back economically? In the aftermath of this war, An economically destroyed Ukraine is bound to be seen as a major accomplishment of Putin by the Russian establishment. Can Ukraine possibly rebuild its economy on a new foundation, or is it doomed to decades of economic and technological decline?